President Zelensky says he's ready to sit down with you and Vladimir Putin in Geneva, and it sounds like General Kellogg is working on preparations for that. Are you planning to sit down with the two of them?
Well, I will if it's necessary. At this point, we're working on President Putin, and we'll see where we are. I think we're doing fine, but we'll see. I don't like what's happening. That's one thing I'll say. I don't like when I see rockets being shot into cities. That's no good. We're not going to allow it.
President Trump discussing a potential sit-down meeting with Russia's Putin and Ukraine's Zelensky. The next scheduled talks happening between officials June 2nd in Istanbul. Plus, we've got breaking news this morning. The New York Post is reporting that President Trump gave Putin a deadline to prove he's serious about ending the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin releasing a list of Putin's demands to end the war on Ukraine. They include written assurance by Western leaders not allowing Ukraine into NATO and lifting sanctions on Russia. Joining me now is Special Presidential Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. General, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for spending the time.
Hey, Maria, thanks. It's always great to be with you. Thank you.
Are there new proposals right now from the U.S. side for a ceasefire?
Well, Maria, where we're at is when President Putin and President Trump spoke a couple weeks ago, the Russians said they were going to give to us and give to the Ukrainians a memorandum. I call it a term sheet. What that means is we've got the Ukrainian term sheet, we want the Russian term sheet, and then we'll meld them together and we'll see what it looks like, and seeing what's not workable and what is workable, and then come up hopefully to a ceasefire. And that's the most important thing we can come up with, is a ceasefire, as President Trump has repeatedly said, stop the killing. Look, what President Trump has done in the last 122 days is much more than was done in the previous administration in their 1,200 days. What I mean by that is we've had meetings now in Jeddah, in Riyadh, in Paris, in London, in Istanbul, and now back to Istanbul as well, where we're going to sit down and we're going to say, okay, well, this is what it looks like. These are the terms. How can we get to this ceasefire? Because that's what you want to have now, is you want to have an ability to stop the killing, which is really horrific levels, and to stop the shelling of the cities, which, by the way, is a direct violation of the 1977 Geneva Protocols, which said there was not supposed to be any indiscriminate shooting into civilian areas, killing women and children. We're signatory to that. The Russians are signatory to that. The Ukrainians are signatory to that. And that's what got President Trump a little bit upset about what was happening. So that's hopefully we're going to be within about a week.
Has President Trump given Putin a deadline for ending the war?
No, Marie, he hasn't. But I think what President Trump is coming from, he says, look, let's just be reasonable. That's what you're looking for, is a level of reasonableness of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I think that's going to be very, very important. And that's what we're going to find out. We're going to find out where are both sides at, where do they want to go to, are both sides being reasonable when you sit down and negotiate with them. The Ukrainians are sending their Minister of Defense, Umarov, who's very fluent in English, very good. He's very, very talented. He's Crimean in background, and he was the one in the last meeting we had in Istanbul when they didn't get to a ceasefire. What they actually got was the exchange of 1,000 prisoners, which is pretty significant, which is a level of exchange which has never happened before. So, you know, I've got optimism. I'm a born optimist. I know President Trump's an optimist too. And we'll see where it goes. Umarov is the right person to sit at the chair to negotiate and to discuss. And we'll see where it goes next week.
And do you believe that Hamas would be willing to release more living hostages?
You said Hamas. You mean the Russians.
The Russians, sorry. My apologies, yeah.
Yeah, and where I believe so, yes. And what we're trying to get back also, because, again, President Trump spoke with President Zelensky earlier, is we're trying to get some of the kids back. You know, we're looking at over 20,000 children that are actually under Russian control, and we want to get them back as well, not just only the prisoners of war, the fighters, but let's get some of the kids back. And I think that's, you know, the moms and dads will be happy about that. And we know there's a significant number that are being held by the Russians. Make that part of the negotiation package, bring them home as well.
Yeah. President Trump was asked about new sanctions on Russia yesterday. I want to get your take on this and whether or not we could actually see this materialize. Here's the president, General. Watch.
What stopped you from imposing new sanctions on Russia?
Only the fact that if I think I'm close to getting a deal, I don't want to screw it up by doing that. Let me tell you, I'm a lot tougher than the people you're talking about. This isn't my war. This is Biden's war, Zelensky's war, and Putin's war. I'm only here for one thing, to see if I can end it, to save 5,000 lives a week and a lot of money.
General, what about that? I mean, even the president seemed very frustrated the other day when he said, look, Putin's gone crazy. You know, he's killing all of these people every day. What is stopping the U.S. from putting sanctions on Russia right now?
Well, I think, Maria, where the president's coming from, he doesn't want to have any limits on his ability to negotiate and talk with people. And he's been very, very good at it. Look, he's made his whole life on making deals. And when you look at what he's done, he wants to have some leverage, you know, movement space to do this. And I know there's a major sanctions package that Lindsey Graham has put together, which has over, I believe now, 80 co-sponsors, which puts very, very significant sanctions on the Russians, and also it bleeds over to the Chinese and the Indians as well. And I think he just wants to be able to move around in the negotiation space without being constrained by something that puts a lot of pressure on people he's negotiating with. I think it's a pretty smart strategy.
But at this point, you know, how long can he keep that strategy going while Russia, you know, according to some, is playing the U.S.? He doesn't really want to see this war end.
Yeah, well, I would never bet against President Trump. I think people have made major mistakes in doing that as well. And I think he understands what's happening. He understands the personalities involved. He understands from negotiation what it's going to take to get a win or not a win. And a win means not only ending the war, but a ceasefire where the killing is stopped. So yeah, he understands that pretty well. He's bet his whole life on it. His whole life has been a deal maker. So I think he knows, kind of said, okay, this is what gives me some advantages, and this is what creates disadvantages for me in that discussion. And I think he's been very, very vocal about it. And he's been very, very clear to both sides, the Ukrainians and the Russians and the American people as well.
And General, you've done such an incredible job on all of this. We appreciate your leadership. What do you want to tell the American people watching that's most important for us to understand about where we are right now?
Yeah, well, I think what's important to understand is this is a little bit different than when President Trump left 4 years ago and is now in his second term. What I mean by that is what you always fear, and I always fear in the national security space, is a fear of escalation and making a mistake. You know, that's one of those where, okay, if something happens, where do you go to? How do you get either on or off what is called the escalation ladder? And the people you're dealing with is a different world. What I mean by that is 4 years ago, we didn't see the Russians aligned with the North Koreans, aligned with the Chinese, and aligned with the Iranians in both the economics and diplomatic and military. And I think now that they're all together, how do you break that apart? How do you make sure that it's workable for the American people? And I think the American people need to kind of understand that is you've got a pretty darn good commander-in-chief at the helm. He really understands this. He's got a great team around him that, you know, gives him a pretty darn solid advice. He's not in. I know the Russians made the comment, well, we don't believe he's informed. No, he's very informed. He's got a very good director of the CIA, in John Radcliffe, and Tulsi Gabbard, who runs defense and all of it on national intelligence. So he gets that information. He gets in his presidential daily briefings, and he gets, you know, the documents are given to him. He's a very well-read person, and he gets the briefings of the people, and his advisors give him left and right limits. And I think nobody can ever say he's not well-informed. My experience with him, he's always well-informed.
And what do you want to say about the strength or the coalition behind Russia? I mean, you've got China supporting this war, even if they won't admit it. You've got, you know, Iran also. I mean, the bad guys seem to have teamed up. How substantial is that?
Well, Marie, it's significant. It's significant because you've got the Chinese, you've got the North Koreans who are providing troops into Russia as well, and the Iranians. So you've got the Far East involved, you've got the Mideast involved, and you've got Europe involved as well. And there's a good coalition. They call it the Coalition of the Willing in the European organizations, you know, in their neighborhood, and it's in their neighborhood. And they've really picked up the slack. They've done an awful lot in the last few years, both in their defense policy, where they're going, and economics as well, and they kind of understand it. You know, President Trump warned them against, you know, dealing with the Russians economically. He actually did that at the first UN General Assembly speech in his first presidency. And he went up to New York City and he gave that speech and he said, hey, look, you're kind of supporting what the Russians are doing. And a lot of people didn't believe him or listen to him. He was very clear, and he's been very, very clear on what he sees and is very, very well informed. And one thing he uses, you know, he does use words very, very well. I go back to what Winston Churchill did. Winston Churchill used words as a weapon, and President Trump does that as well.
Yeah.
And he says he's very clear to people. He's very open with people. He tells them exactly where he stands. If you don't know where Donald Trump stands on an issue, then you are just not listening.
Yeah, great point.
Because he's very clear to everybody.
General, it's great to see you this morning. We so appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.